This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Ruan Hongyu also arrived in an instant. Her face was ashen as she gritted her teeth and said, "You've been trying to communicate with it for so many years, but you've never succeeded. This crazy girl hasn't touched this thing for so many years, but it can still be activated. Did she do something to it back then?" Jiang Churan shook her head and smiled bitterly. Treasures have their own spirituality. Everyone has their own opportunities. You can't force it. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden rod suddenly flew out of the altar and turned into a stream of light. The entire sky was dyed red as if it was burning. Dongmen Yuan's expression changed drastically. He suddenly felt an endless force pressing down on him. Soon, he saw the golden staff breaking through the air, as if it was going to crush everything. He suddenly sucked in a cold breath. Ever since he was injured by Huangfu Xian, this was the first time he felt great danger. He hurriedly made a hand seal, and the golden warrior suddenly roared and became huge. It slammed its palm toward the stick. With one move, the pressure was like rolling thunder. The entire sky garden trembled violently and was about to collapse at any moment. Ruan Yuanci exhaled and said in horror, "It really is a scepter." A complicated look appeared in his eyes. He also formed a seal with one hand, and a power immediately appeared from his body. It formed a barrier that enveloped the entire space garden. Only then did the trembling stabilize. Does it mean that the bigger you become, the more powerful you are? Ning Qiue sneered and made a strange gesture with her hands. It was as beautiful as a dance, which was pleasing to the eye. Unfortunately, no one was watching. Everyone's eyes were frozen in the sky. The golden scepter suddenly split open and began to transform in the air. In an instant, it turned into a huge golden pigeon. It was extremely fat and cute, and its two small claws grabbed at the golden warrior's arm. Dongmen Yuan's expression changed drastically. The soul slave was directly connected to his soul. As the golden pigeon grabbed at it, he felt a powerful weapon accumulation shaking into his soul. It was actually trying to tear the soul slave that had gathered 10,000 souls into pieces. This situation scared Dongmen Yuan out of his wits. An unreal feeling appeared in his mind. He was a peak Earth-rank soul slave. Its power far exceeded that of an ordinary 9th-tier profound armament, so how could it be easily torn apart? He quickly made hand seals with one hand, and the soul-devouring flag in his other hand quickly unfolded, fluttering in the wind. A terrifying scene of hell appeared in the sky, and everyone broke out in cold sweat when they looked at it. Ning Qiue waved her body and said softly, "Memory is a curtain full of wind chimes, and a person's life is mostly centered on regrets, extending in time." As her voice rang out, the golden pigeon grabbed onto the soul slave and refused to let go. It allowed the surrounding environment to change and countless vengeful souls and evil spirits to rush out, but it was not moved in the slightest. No one can stop those years that have gone far away. Everything is just like the quicksand of a finger. Ning Qiue's eyes suddenly turned cold. She said, "Time song." Boom. In the purgatory, the golden soul slave suddenly let out a cry of horror and was torn into pieces by the pigeon. Countless souls rushed out and wailed in the world of the soul-devouring flag. Pfft. Dongmen Yuan spurted out a mouthful of blood. The destruction of the Earth Soul formation had given him a huge backlash. The genuine chi in his body was tumbling, and his body was in great pain as if it was about to be torn apart. Dongmen Yin and Cheng Homiao were completely dumbfounded. They were well aware of the power of the Earth-grade soul slave. How could it have been killed so easily? Although the soul could be condensed from the soul-devouring flag after a certain amount of time as long as it was not destroyed, how could such a godly existence in their sect be so vulnerable? Their self-confidence was severely damaged, and they began to have great doubts about the future development of soul slaves. With a smile in his eyes, Yun Shao nodded slightly and praised. Ning Qiue had been dispirited for so many years, but her martial arts had improved instead of regressing. It seemed that her emotionless and quiet cultivation of martial arts had turned out to be a blessing in disguise. You actually tore my earth soul, I'll fight you to the death. Dongmen Yuan went completely mad. After spurting out a mouthful of blood, he waved the soul-devouring flag in his hand. The world of purgatory of evil spirits suddenly descended, trying to swallow the entire breeze and bright moon. Protect the garden, Ning Kue said to Ruan Yuanxi. After spitting out these two words, she flew into the air and lured away the evil ghosts and resentful spirits. Ruan Yuanxi laughed bitterly. A long green sword appeared in the air, and sword chi flashed. He placed both hands on the hilt of the sword and stabbed it into the ground. A wave of sword chi spread out from the ground with him as the center, covering the entire wind and moon building under his sword light and repelling all the yin chi outside. Only then did everyone feel a trace of warmth, and their blood was surging. A battle of this level had only existed in various legends. Now that they could see it with their own eyes, this trip had not been in vain. You want to leave? Even if you go to the ends of the earth, you will still die. Dongmen Yuan's mind was filled with anger. Countless vengeful souls and evil spirits turned into streams of light and charged forward. Ning Kue waved her hand and the scepter, Song of the Ages, immediately returned to her hand. She waved it gently and scattered the souls. I have billions of living souls here. Let's see how long you'll keep fighting. Dongmen Yuan grinned hideously and waved his hand again. An overwhelming number of evil ghosts rushed out of purgatory and roared. Ning Kue frowned and said in a cold voice, the Soul Devourer sect is really a sect that shouldn't exist. How many people do they have to kill to make a banner? She held the Song of Time in her right hand and raised it high. A golden light flashed on the scepter and it immediately transformed. The golden light illuminated her entire body. A sorrowful voice rang out, the past few years should be a good time in name only. Even if there are 1,000 different styles, who can you talk to? In the blink of an eye, the scepter disappeared, and the dazzling golden light reappeared on her body. The golden battle clothes on the beautiful figure shimmered like a light, slowly shining under the moonlight. She held a golden sword in her hand, like a fairy of the moon, as she came over on the waves. Ruan Yuanxi's eyes were filled with complicated emotions. They were filled with all sorts of envy and jealousy. Scepter Song of the Ages, it was the symbol of the highest power in Red Moon City. At the same time, it was also an extremely powerful profound level weapon. It was something that the previous city lords had to refine. However, since he became the city lord, only Ning Kue could control it. If it wasn't for the incident that disheartened her and made her live in seclusion at Peach Blossom Cove, the position of city lord wouldn't have been Jiang Churen's. Dongmen Yuan's heart skipped a beat. The scepter's transformation made him feel even more frightened. He shouted and quickly formed a seal with his hands. A cold and gloomy light appeared in the purgatory-like scene in the sky and turned into a huge ghost head. It desperately devoured and absorbed hundreds of millions of souls. The Ghost Pagoda. Dongmen Yin was shocked, and cold air came out of the pores all over his body. Chang Haomiao, who was standing beside him, could not help but frown as he felt his body temperature drop. Master Hu, what is this Ghost Pagoda? He could not help but ask. Dongmen Yin's body trembled and he said with a dry throat, the Ghost Pagoda is a kind of giant spirit magical power. It's similar to gathering murderous aura to make the god of killing descend. This Ghost Pagoda uses 10,000 souls to serve the Ghost King, so that the Ghost King will come to the human world. The ghost head in the purgatory continued to grow stronger after devouring thousands of souls. It gradually condensed into a body and emitted a terrifying aura. Dongmen Yuan laughed loudly. I will make up for the souls I lost by feeding the Ghost King today from your Red Moon City. He cast an incantation seal on the Ghost King's body, which emitted a clear light. He shouted, Ghost Pagoda, attack. Rumble. The body of the Ghost King in the purgatory continued to condense. It opened its terrifying mouth and cupped its hands in a circle in front of it, forming a black energy ball. The ball was filled with all kinds of negative energy, and just the pressure alone was enough to shock the hidden experts in the void. Dozens of light beams broke through the void, and they all fled into the distance. Ruan Yuanxi, the guardian of the Wind and Moon Garden, was also sweating profusely. He felt great pressure. All of a sudden, a ray of green light rose and spread out in the garden. It was Ning Hangfeng who had made a move. He controlled it together with him, and the pressure was greatly reduced. Dong Menyuan had already raised his vital essence to the limit and shouted angrily, 6 paths open at the same time, thousands of ghosts and souls, Buddha purgatory. The black energy ball in the Ghost King's hand suddenly emitted a powerful ghostly light and began to devour everything in its surroundings. It was as if it wanted to pull the entire world into purgatory and drop the 6 paths together.
Ah!
Miserable screams kept coming from the sky. Many people who thought they were powerful and hid in the void were swallowed by the black ball. Their bones and souls were gone. This caused even more experts to escape, but it was too late. Except for a few who self-detonated their Xian artifacts and burned their souls to escape, most of them were absorbed and could not escape death. It was as if the gates of hell had opened in the sky above the entire Red Moon city. A terrifying ghostly appearance shocked everyone in the city, and everyone was terrified. Ning Keyue's expression remained unchanged. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and placed her right hand on the sword behind her back. She slowly condensed her yuan qi. Strange symbols appeared on the sword, turned into golden light, and dissipated in the air. An almost inaudible song seemed to ring out from the sword energy. It was as if it came from the celestial capital. It was like a dream, drifting over the Red Moon city and entering everyone's ears. It tugged at their heartstrings. Kowtowing on gold, weaving clothes, Yunshao began to recite. The clouds and water flow, the waves of the sky rise. Sweep away an army of thousands and guide them like a river. Empty embrace of 10,000 worlds, a song of the ages. Everyone's hearts trembled. This poem actually matched the ethereal song seamlessly, making people feel a sense of endless passage of time and the world's desolation. When he stopped, Ning Keyue opened her eyes and said, 1,000 autumns like snow, a half night like a dream, a sword to suppress the soul of time song. The sword seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. The sword light swept out, and a golden light cut through the sky. The order of time was disrupted, as if it was 1,000 autumns and 10,000 years old, a white stallion passing through the crack. Everything was condensed in this sword, and it was going to cut the past, the present, and the future. Under the song of soul-subduing sword, everyone was at a loss. It was as if everything in the world no longer existed. Looking back, only fragments of time were left, constantly shattering in their memories. There were no ancients, and no future. Time was like a song. The experts who could still open their eyes watched in horror as the huge Ghost King's body was cut in half by the sword light like a persimmon. The black energy ball also burst open in an instant, and a large amount of black energy exploded in all directions. Countless resentful souls and malicious ghosts screamed and rushed out in all directions, but they were annihilated by the vicissitudes of life, leaving only loneliness in the world. Thousands of ghosts and broken spirits were expiated by the Song of Requiem and led to the Nirvana realm of the 6 paths, the unknown kingdom of heaven. Dong Menyuan was so frightened that he couldn't make a sound. His mouth was wide open, and his face was completely numb. Bang! The soul-devouring banner in his hand suddenly exploded, and his body was like this gray banner. Blood mist burst out from several of his apertures, scattering into the sky. His entire body was like a deflating balloon, losing all of his energy. He suddenly became dispirited, and his face seemed to have aged hundreds of years in an instant, becoming dim and lightless. The tyrannical sky tiger was shocked and exclaimed, "Great man." He hurriedly flew up to save Dong Menyuan. Ning Keyue's golden armor and sword instantly turned into golden light and condensed in front of her, forming the shape of a scepter. She gently grabbed Song of the Ages and placed it beside her. The entire space shook slightly. The tyrannical sky tiger suddenly let out a blood-curdling screech. It was as if someone had hammered its chest. It spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. At this moment, everyone finally recovered from their dazed state, their faces pale. The battle just now was too shocking and unbelievable. They still didn't understand what had happened. They only knew that Ning Kuyue had won. Dong Menyuan fell from the sky and landed heavily on the wind and moon garden, stirring up dust. The entire sky was deathly silent. No one dared to make a single sound. Even their breathing was extremely careful, and their faces were all pale. Ning Kuyue was still wearing a light green floral dress. She held an ancient scepter in her hand and slowly fell from the sky. Her face was a little pale, but she looked more holy and solemn, like a fairy. This unbelievable battle caused everyone's respect for the woman before them to reach an extreme level. Even Ruan Yuanxi and Ning Hengfeng, as well as the countless people watching from various places, felt their hearts turn cold. That sword art, the Song of Ages, was definitely the strength of one of the 7 sect masters and a titled martial sovereign. It had already surpassed hundreds of millions of people and stood at the peak of this mainland. Among the 8 divisions, only Xiaoba still had strength left. He gathered his courage and placed his sword in front of Dong Menyuan. He said in a trembling voice, You can't kill him. Do you know who our boss is? Ning Kuyue took a few steps forward and walked directly in front of 80. She didn't even make a move, but an invisible force turned into a huge palm and slapped directly. Pa! A loud and clear sound rang out, and 80's entire body was sent flying. Its body flipped a few times in the air before falling down. Ning Kuyue sneered, Your boss? Isn't it just Ling Bai? If you have the guts, then let him hit me. Pa! Another slap sent 80 flying. What? At this moment, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They were so shocked that they couldn't help but exclaim. Ling Bai. Everyone couldn't help but shiver. No wonder Bai Ming Kongtian didn't say anything when he heard this. It was actually the lord with the title of Nightshade, ranked 4th on the heaven and earth power chart. Yunxiao's expression flickered, and a look of reminiscence flashed in his eyes as he sighed. It was indeed him. This was big trouble. Only a demoness like Kuyue would be fearless and completely disregard the consequences. If Jiang Churen was here, she would definitely not break off relations with the 8 divisions so completely. Ruan Yuanxi's forehead was also covered in cold sweat as he silently cursed. If Ling Bai's identity had not been made public, they could still operate in secret and deal with the people from Death God Palace flexibly. However, now that it had been revealed in public, it was not right to kill or not to kill. Moreover, he had already revealed the identity of the top dog. If he attacked again, wouldn't he be making an enemy of that person? You know, and you're still hesitating? Xiaoba covered his face and stood up, looking unconvinced. Pa! Another slap was delivered, and his entire body was sent flying again. His face was already extremely swollen. Lady Ning, why are you? Pa! My boss. Pa! Your Excellency, please mind your manners. Pa! Wah! Stop fighting. Pa! I'm going to kill you. Pa! Stop. What do I have to do to make you stop fighting? Pa! The sound of the slaps shook everyone's hearts. They all felt cold all over and their lips were extremely dry. Especially after knowing their boss's identity, he still dared to make such a move. As the saying goes, you have to look at the owner before hitting the dog. Xiaoba's head was swollen like a watermelon, and it was a purple one at that. He stumbled and got up. It seemed that his head had become heavier after it had grown bigger, and he was falling forward. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Ning Kuyue with resentment. What's wrong? Ning Kuyue asked coldly. Why aren't you talking? Xiaoba pursed his lips tightly, afraid that he would say something again. Pa! Another slap landed on his face. This time, he was directly smashed into the ground, and his entire head was buried in it. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They touched their faces with trembling hands and didn't even dare to breathe. She hit when she spoke and even hit when she didn't speak. This woman was really crazy. Xiaoba had learned his lesson. He kept his head in the ground so that he wouldn't be beaten. Humph. Lingbai was the best? Even if your boss is Ao Chongkong, he won't be able to save you. That ladylike image, but when she spoke, she had a hooligan's domineering aura. She slammed the scepter in her hand on the ground, and immediately a huge force shook out from the ground, directly into the top of Xiaoba's head, blasting him into the sky. When he fell again, he immediately fainted and lost consciousness. 3 of the Death God's 8 elephants and the Death God Palace's palace master, Li Yi, were all lying on the ground, losing all their combat power. Li's face was pale, and he didn't know what to do. The strength of the woman in front of her was too terrifying. Even if she recovered to the peak of her demonic power, she was most likely not the woman's opponent. This person was the strongest human she had seen since she woke up. Ning Kue looked at her coldly and said to Ning Hengfeng, "Take these 5 people to the dungeon. According to the rules of Red Moon City, whoever they are, kill them." Yes, yes. Ning Hengfeng was also covered in cold sweat. Today's matter was no longer something he could make a decision on. He hurriedly summoned the martial emperor powerhouses in the imperial army to act as porters and captured Li Yi and the other 4. The Song of Ages in Ning Kue's hand suddenly turned into golden light and disappeared. She looked at the sky quietly and said, "Lord Kong Tian, just now you said that you wanted to bring my little friend back to Baiming Dark Palace? Please come down and tell me the details. You're standing too far away, it's not convenient to talk." The sky where she was staring at trembled, and then Baiming Kongtian's figure appeared. He had a nervous expression on his face, and he turned into a light that fell into the wind and moon garden. Baiming Kongtian was also having a headache. He didn't expect that he would provoke such a powerful person. He smiled apologetically and said, "I don't know where that Li Yunxiao learned the cracking method of my Baiming Dark Palace's secrets, but I'd like to invite him back for a chat over a drink, so that we can verify our martial arts and improve together." Everyone felt dizzy after hearing that. Even the elders of Baiming Dark Palace had to be careful in front of Ning Kue. "Yunxiao," Ning Kue said to Yunxiao. "Boy, are you willing to go?" "Of course not." Yunxiao shook his head and said, "This elder Kongtian is too fierce. I don't dare, he'll kill me," he said innocently with a harmless look. "Why would I?" Baiming Kongtian laughed awkwardly and said, "This old man admires young juniors who innovate in martial arts the most, and I can't wait to cherish them. In Baiming Dark Palace, as long as I'm here, no one can lay a finger on you. Of course, we have to respect your opinion and not force you to go." "Then why did you say you would wait for me in Red Moon City?" Yunxiao asked. "And you told me not to go out for the rest of my life if I had the guts?" Baiming Kongtian laughed and said, "That's just a joke. It's really because of the beautiful scenery in Red Moon City. I just want to stay here for a few more days." "But Lady Yu, I'll be staying for 10 days to half a month, is that okay?" "Yes," Ning Kue said indifferently. Baiming Kongtian, Swan and I. "If there's nothing else, just go back," Ning Kue said. "The Red Moon City doesn't like idle people." Baiming Kongtian was furious. Although he was very afraid of Ning Kue, he was still an elder of a sect. He wasn't afraid that Ning Kue would kill him. After all, Baiming Dark Palace was not to be trifled with. However, he was afraid that this demoness would torture him like how she tortured Xiaoba. If that happened, his face would be completely destroyed. The situation was stronger than the person, so he had no choice but to lower his head. "Then I'll take my leave." He cupped his hands and said in a deep voice. He didn't dare to say anything more, nor did he dare to throw out any harsh words. He was filled with anger and grievance as he disappeared from the garden in an instant. He did not want to know the result of the challenge tournament. With Ning Kue here, no one could touch Yunxiao. As soon as Baiming Kongtian left, the sky suddenly changed color. A red light fell down and illuminated the garden, making it look exceptionally beautiful. Yunxiao's heart trembled, and an indescribable feeling welled up in his heart. He felt a pain in his head, and his eyes could not help but turn into blood-red lunar pupils. He was horrified and hurriedly tried to suppress them. If they were to appear at this moment, even Ningqiu would not be able to save him. Suddenly, Ruan Xiling cried out in shock, Crimson Moon, Crimson Moon. The moon has turned red.